Hi, everybody. Thanks for checking out this episode of Math with Mr. G. I am your host, Mr. Gillis, and today we'll be discussing expressions and a little bit more specifically, the distributive property. Okay, so our learning target is I can use the distributive property to simplify expressions. In Chapter 3, we've been working with all sorts of different types of expressions, adding them, subtracting them, simplifying them, and today we're just going to add one more step onto that, and that's how we can simplify an expression using the distributive property. Now, the root word in distributive is distribute. And when I think of distribute, I think of a couple different things. Maybe like a good example of that would be a sentence like UPS man will distribute packages. Okay, so he will, deliver packages to people. Maybe you could substitute UPS man with Santa. Santa will distribute packages on Christmas, right? Or you can think of another, you might hear it like if you're watching sports, if you're a sports fan, a good point guard in basketball will be a good distributor, meaning he's good at sharing the basketball. Okay. Or a good quarterback is good at distributing the football, right? Sharing it to his teammates. I could go keep going on and on, but I'm guessing you're picking up what I'm putting down here. And it's kind of the same in math. Is just using the distributive property means you're taking whatever on the outside of your parentheses and you're distributing it to whatever on the inside of your parentheses. Again, I'm kind of thinking about Santa Claus here, sharing. Okay, so let's take a look at how I could simplify this expression using the distributive property. And when we're using the distributive property, we're using multiplication. Remember that when anything is right next to a set of parentheses or right next to each other in math, we imply that that's multiplication. Okay, so this negative 1/3 is right next to this set of parentheses here. So that means we need to multiply negative 1/3 by 3n. And we also need to multiply negative 1/3 by this negative 6. If you want to think about this as negative 6, or you could always do chop, because adding a negative and subtracting are the same. So we have to be really good at keeping track of our subtraction signs here too. Okay, so let's do that. Let's take negative 1/3 and let's multiply that by 3n. So negative 1/3 times 3. And 3 as a fraction, remember, is 3 over 1. Well, if I were to multiply across, 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 1 is also 3. Okay, and then I've got a negative times a positive. When I have different signs and I'm multiplying, that gives me a negative answer. Okay, and negative 3 divided by 3, anything divided by itself is 1. So that would give me negative 1n. Remember, that's the same as negative n. We assume that there's a 1 there. Okay, so basically I took 1/3 and I multiplied it by 3. Kept track of my negatives and then also realized I was multiplying that by 3n. Okay, now I also have to take negative 1/3 and I have to multiply it by negative 6. Okay, again, because I did change the subtraction to addition and the 6 to its opposite. All right, so I have negative 1/3 times 6, negative 1/3 times 6. Okay, multiply on top will give me negative 6 over 3 times 1 is 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. a negative divided by a positive. Different signs means that's a negative answer. Oh, sorry. This was also a negative 6. I just forgot that. Okay, so that can give me a positive 6 and a positive 2. Okay, see how easy it is? I already messed it up to forget about your signs. All right, so when I multiplied, I'm going to use a different color now. When I multiplied negative 1/3 times 3n, I got negative n. And I'm adding to that. When I multiplied negative 1/3 times 6, I got 2. So this expression simplified is negative n plus 2. Okay, you can kind of think about this. Remember, when you multiply by 1/3, multiplying by 1/3 is the same thing as dividing by 3, right? So essentially, we took 3n plus 6, and we divided both of these by 3. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1. That's what we got. And of course, it's going to be negative because we had different signs. And we took 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So essentially, we divided this expression right here by 3 because dividing by 3 and multiplying by 3 is the same. All right, I'll quit rambling and let's try another one. So I'm going to take whatever on the outside, my 5, and I'm going to distribute it, share it with whatever on the inside. And remember, since it's smushed up next to that parentheses, that means multiply. So first I'd have negative 5 times negative x plus 5 times 3y. And sorry, that's a positive 5. 5 times negative x plus 5 times 3y. Okay, well, 5 times negative x, remember that's just like negative 1x. So 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Bring my x along. Plus 5 times 3 would be 15y. And remember, since these two terms have different variables, you cannot add them together. They're not like. So that's as simple as we can get. Again, we just took 5 and we multiplied it by everything that was in the parentheses. Okay, so why don't you pause the video here and try 1, 2, and 3 on your own and see if you're catching on. All right, let's do these together. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x or negative x. And negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. So plus negative 9. Remember, you could also write that as negative x minus 9 because adding a negative is the same as subtracting. All right, in number 2, we had to multiply by a fraction now. So 2/3 times negative 3z, and 2/3 times, again, I'm going to chop here, negative 6. So 2/3 times 3 can be 3 over 1. I'm going to simplify first here. Divide each by 3, I'd get 1 and 1. So 2 times 1 is 2, over 1 times 1 is 1, which simplifies to 2. And then I had a positive times a negative. So different signs is going to give me a negative answer. I got negative 2, and then don't forget about your variable, z. And again, I like to draw that cross through the middle of my z to show that it's not a 2, because that could easily look like negative 22. Plus, then I have to do 2/3 times 6. 2/3 times 6. Again, I could simplify first, so divide each of these by 3, I'd get 1 and 2. Multiply across, so I'm going to 4 over 1, which is 4. And then I had a positive times a negative. Different signs is going to give me a negative answer, so plus negative 4. And then lastly, wrapping up with number 3 here, I've got 1.5 times 8, right? 1.5, 1.5 times 8 would be 40, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Bring my decimal one spot over. So negative 1.5 times 8 would be 12, and it would be negative since I have different signs, and I need to bring my variable along, negative 12m. I'm going to change my subtraction to addition and the next to its opposite. And then I have a negative times a negative. And I forgot to add in my arrows. I usually like to do that. That reminds me to multiply by both terms. A lot of times students will forget to multiply whatever on the outside by both terms on the inside. So here I have the same sign, so it's going to be a positive, and then that's 1n times 1.5. Well, 1.5 times 1 is just 1.5, and then it's n. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to catch on a little bit here. If you had questions about those three at all, let me know. In the next example here, there's one small difference, and that is inside my parentheses here, I have some like terms that I could combine before I distribute. Now, you don't have to do that. You could technically distribute first and then add your like terms at the end. That's up to you. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add my like terms. And in this case, I have negative 1 plus 7. And negative 1 plus 7 would give me 6. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 3 times 2x, and then negative 1 plus 7 would give me positive 6. Okay, all I did was add my like terms. Now in the next steps, it's very similar to what I just did in the previous examples. Distribute my negative 3 to everything inside the parentheses. Again, here's that common error. Students multiply each sum by negative 3, not 3. So careful on that. Don't forget about your signs. I've done it before. I just did it earlier. So negative 3 times 2x would give me negative 6x plus negative 3 times 6 would give me negative 18. And again, the reason I put my parentheses here is just to make this look nice and neat, so I don't have a plus and a negative right next to each other. Remember, that's the same thing as negative 6x minus 18. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. I will take either answer there. Either will work. Okay. Why don't you pause again and try that the same way for numbers 4 and 5. Again, I prefer to add my like terms first, so I'm going to combine these like terms first. So if I did that, I would have 2 times negative 3s plus 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Okay. Now let's distribute. Again, before I even distribute, what I'm thinking to myself is what I'm doing here is I'm taking 2 times everything in here. So I'm just essentially doubling whatever in my parentheses. So 2 times negative 3s is negative 6s plus 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Again, that could also be written as negative 6s minus 8. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. Number 5 then, I have to distribute my negative 3 halves to everything in here, but I have a couple of like terms. I have positive a minus 2a. So that's like 1 minus 2. 1 minus 2 will give me negative 1. So that would be negative 1a. Okay, negative 3 halves times negative 1a minus 4. This is subtracting 4. Again, I just took these two like terms and subtracted them. 1 minus 2 to get negative 1a. All right, I can think about subtracting 4 as adding negative 4 if that helps me. They're the same. And then I just need to distribute. So negative 3 halves times negative a. I have the same sign now, so that's going to give me a positive answer. So 3 halves a. Again, this is the same as negative 1. So 3 halves times 1 is just 3 halves. Plus, again, I'm going to have a negative times a negative. That's going to give me a positive. And then I have 3 halves times 4. Okay, multiply across will give me 12 over 2, which will give me 6. Okay, so 3 halves a plus 6. If you have questions, please phone a friend or be sure to ask me. And we'll end here with just a couple more examples. They get just a little bit trickier, where we combine what we just learned with the distributive property to what we learned last section with adding and subtracting expressions. Okay, so these look like doozies, but just take her one step at a time, and I got a feeling you're going to catch on. So for letter A here, I've got negative 1/2 times 6n times 4. And then notice the plus 2n comes after that. So I don't distribute it if it's not in the parentheses. Okay, so first I'll just distribute my negative half. So I'm taking essentially half of this. So what's half of 6n? Well, that'd be 3n. And then a negative times a positive, different signs gives me negative. And then what's half of 4? That would be 2. And then again, a negative times a positive would give me a negative. So plus negative 2. And then what I'll do is I didn't do anything with my plus 2n yet. I'm going to bring that down in my expression. Okay. Now you should look and see, is there any other like terms that I can combine? Well, yeah, I have two terms that have n's. So I've got negative 3 halves n plus 2n. Negative 3 plus 2 will give me negative 1n, or negative n. And then I can't add negative 2 to that because it doesn't have an n. So I'll just bring it down in my expression. Plus negative 2. And that is as simple as I can get. So again, we've used the distributive property first, and then in the end, we combine our like terms to add negative 3n plus 2n. All right, letter B is kind of similar to that, except now we're using subtraction. So I have 6d minus 5. That looks simple as it can get. Minus, okay, I need to take 8 and I need to distribute it to everything on the inside of my parentheses. Okay, so 8 times 3/4, 8 times 3/4 would give me, I'll simplify first, divide by 4 would be 1, divide by 4 would be 2. So that would give me 6 over 1, which is 6. So when I distribute here, I would get 6d. And then when I take 8 times, okay, I'm going to chop here, negative 1, that would give me negative 8, or plus negative 8. You can think about it whichever way you want. And then I'm going to bring everything else in my expression down that I did not do. Okay, now I need to take 6d minus 5, and I need to subtract 6d plus negative 8. Okay, so remember, pay very close attention to your signs here, right? I'm going to use the horizontal method here. You could use the vertical method and line these up if you want, but I'm just going to underline my like terms. So I have 6d minus 6d, and I have negative 5 minus negative 8. 6d minus 6d, anything minus itself is 0. So those are essentially going to cancel out. And then I have negative 5 minus negative 8. Okay, I'm going to change my subtraction to addition and the next to its opposite. So that would give me negative 5 plus positive 8. If I have 5 negatives and 8 positives, what am I left with? Positive 3. Okay, so again, we're combining a couple things there. We're combining the distributive property with subtracting our expressions. So it can get a little cumbersome, but keep track of those steps. Lastly, pause the video here for 6 and 7 and see how you do. Okay, here I'm going to distribute. So I have negative 3.5 m minus, I brought all this down in my problem, 1.5 times m is 1.5 m, and 1.5 times negative 10, so plus, that's going to give me a negative 1.5 times 10 would be 15. Okay. Again, I had that positive times a negative. That's how I got that negative. And now we need to subtract these. So 3.5 m minus 1.5 m would give me, let's see here, 3.5 minus 1.5 would be 2m, right? And then I'll just bring this down in my expression, plus negative 15. Same thing as 2m minus 15. All right, and then lastly in number 7, I need to distribute first. And actually, it looks like I need to distribute 2 times because I have 2 numbers outside of my parentheses. So I need to take 4/5 times 10. Okay, so simplify will give me 8w. And then I need to add to that 4/5 times 5. 4/5 times 5. Simplify will give me 4/1, which is 4. So plus negative 4. Again, it's negative because I have this positive times this negative. And I'm going to subtract. 2 times w is 2w. And then 2 times 9 is 18. Okay, what like terms do I have now? I've got 8w minus 2w, which would give me 6w. And I have negative 4 minus 18. Negative 4 minus 18. Chop, chop. That would give me negative 22. So I have 6w plus negative 22. Same thing as 6w minus 22. All right, so that might look like a lot. I know it can be tricky the first time you learn it, but again, when you think of the distributive property, think about like sports athletes distributing the ball or sharing the ball. And then you need to remember that anything on the outside smushed next to anything in parentheses is implying multiplication. If you can do those 2 things and keep your negatives and positives straight, I think you will start to catch on with the distributive property. Okay, that's all I have for today. Thanks for checking out the tutorial video. I will see you guys next time.